Let's pretend you're going on a trip. Let's pretend you're flying to Egypt. You want to see those pyramids. You studied all the maps, you mapped out your tourist attractions that you want to check out, you learned the language, or at least enough of it to survive on your trip, and you packed the right clothes. It's going to be warm out there. You want to dress for the weather. Now let's pretend you're on the plane, and the plane actually touches down in Germany. You don't have maps, you don't have your tourist attractions mapped out, you certainly don't know the language, and your clothing may not be appropriate. It's a little colder in Germany, especially as I record this in April, than it is in Egypt right now. So there's a problem. What are you going to do? Well, you buy a map. You figure out some different attractions to go to. You learn enough of the language, you buy a guidebook, or you ask people for help so that you get around and you get to those places that you want to visit. You also can buy clothes, right? If you get to the wrong destination, you can still survive. Your trip can still be fun and entertaining and quite the adventure. I'm going to use that story as an analogy for my life. When I got married at the age of 22, my husband and I did not plan very well, and we ended up with a surprise baby. At the age of 23, I got pregnant. We had baby number 1 when I was 24. I was very career-oriented, very driven to carry out my career the way I wanted it to go. What happened was I had a baby at the age of 24. Didn't know anything about having babies. It was my first son, Kraig, and a lot of my friends were not having kids yet. My mom still worked full-time. My husband's mom still worked full-time. I had to figure out a lot by myself. In the year 2005, I welcomed our second son, Derrick, into the picture. About 6 months later, not even 6 months later, my first son, Kraig, got diagnosed with autism. And that is what we're going to talk about today. I thought I had one kind of a kid, but I ended up with another. And it has been a beautiful trip. Hi, my name is Kim Newlove. I am the host of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. I am 43 years old, and I have a 19-year-old son with autism. I've been married for more than 20 years, and my husband and I have Kraig, who's 19, and Derrick, who's 17. Kraig has autism. Derrick is what you call neurotypical or typically developing. In today's episode, I am going to share what I wish a parent of a young adult with autism, so that's me right now, would have shared with me when Kraig was first diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. Let me repeat that. Today, I'm sharing what I wish that a parent of a young adult with autism would have shared with me when Kraig was first diagnosed at the age of 2. When Kraig was 2 and he first got his diagnosis, I constantly wondered what he would be like someday. I think I had panic attacks about it. I never had it like a diagnosis, but I really think that I had some panic attacks over what would Kraig be like someday. I would wake up in the middle of the night with my heart racing and wonder, what's he going to be like someday? If you want to know what your child is going to be like someday, I cannot tell you that. Anybody who thinks they have a crystal ball and they can predict it, let me just say, run the other way. Some of the kids that my son grew up with outgrew their diagnosis completely. They're in college right now. Some of the other kids are going to prom, they're graduating from high school, they're making plans to go to college next year. That's not Kraig. Kraig did not, and we'll talk about predictions a little bit later on. Why am I recording this episode? It sounds like a downer already, Kim. Geez. The reason that I'm doing this, it's kind of a follow-up from episode 146 featuring Dr. Christina Madison. Learning the ropes of having a child with autism was like drinking from a fire hose. There's a lot to learn all at once. It was overwhelming. I'm still a little overwhelmed, and my kid's 19, but I want to put this out there in case it helps someone. My son right now is going through the transition to adulthood. He's actually transitioning out of school in the next few years, and that is overwhelming too. The overwhelm doesn't end. But if somebody had just told me that I would constantly feel overwhelmed and that that's normal, it would have gone a long way. So I'm here to tell you, feeling overwhelmed is normal. It doesn't stop. I've got a 19-year-old. And if you are a parent of a young one with autism, I just want to keep it real and let you know what things were like from birth through now. Who is this episode for? This episode is not for everyone. This is not my typical kind of an episode. This is me kind of raw and real, to be honest. So if this episode isn't for everyone, who is it for? Well, if you know someone who's having a hard time with a child with autism and they need to hear from like a big sister type of person or a mentor who's been in the trenches for about 19 years now, do me a favor, share this with them. I wish that I could have peeked into somebody else's life, someone who had an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old when my son was about 2. If that's you, this episode is exactly for you. And by the way, I thought that just because I lived in the year 2005 when my son got his diagnosis, that I would be better off than people who got their diagnosis in the 80s or the 90s. But that is not necessarily true. Technology, treatments, resources, and so on have definitely come a long way. I think we can agree on that. But unless you as a parent set the vision for what you want your child's future to be like and put in the time and effort needed to engage your child, you are no better off. I thought just because my child was born in a different time, he was going to be better off. But I just want to say that's a normal thought. I want to validate that, but it's not necessarily true. Get to know your child and their needs. Every child with autism is different. I know that as I've raised my child, I've heard this phrase over and over again. If you've met one child with autism, you've met one child with autism. They are all different. Again, get to know your child and their needs. Set the vision for what you want their future to be like. And find people that you trust in the treatment and education space and listen to them. You will grow personally. You'll also help your child grow. This is maybe some tough love, I don't know, but it's the truth and you need to hear it. There's more than one way to help your child. Open up your mind and your heart. You're going to be okay. And trust me, you need to hear that more than you know. I wish somebody would have said it to me. One of my big goals for this episode is to get some important vocabulary words out there. There are podcasts these days to help parents raising children with autism. When I had my son get diagnosed in 2005, podcasts were not really a thing. If they were not very popular. And if there would have been some person who had an adult, a young adult, who was giving out advice, I would have listened to that in a heartbeat to get the vocabulary words. I really want to get some important vocabulary words out there. You're smart. If you're listening to this and you found this, you are smart. You can research any vocabulary words that I put out there, and there will be great lists of key terms, these vocabulary words in the show notes. So anyone listening to this who wants to learn more, do your research. You got this. Now, I'm a pharmacist. We're very detail-oriented, and we love lists, and I am dying to make an episode that's super complete, has everything in it that you could ever want, but I'm sure I'm going to leave things out. I just want to put a disclaimer in there. I am human, I am a parent, and I am just trying to help. I will definitely talk about my family's experience with diagnosis and treatment. I'm going to give you some helpful resources, but I can't say everything. This is not like a doctoral thesis on autism. Just keep in mind, this is mostly my family's experience. And I'll be sure to put as much as I can in the show notes. All right. Now, for anybody who's new to the Pharmacist Voice podcast, welcome. I'm Kim Newlove, host of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. I am a pharmacist by training, but I made a career transition to voice actor and podcast host. Among other things, I narrate audiobooks for women pharmacist authors, provide medical narration to clients in the pharmaceutical and biotech industries, and narrate content for explainer videos and e-learning projects. I was inspired by my nonverbal teenage son, Kraig, who has autism, to combine my background as a pharmacist with my speaking voice and launch my business, The Pharmacist Voice, in 2017. My son, Kraig, helped me realize the power of having a voice and using it. My solo podcast episodes are about some aspect of being a pharmacist, a voice actor, a pharmacist podcaster, or my career transition from pharmacist to voice actor and podcast host. My interview shows feature a variety of people who use their voices to advocate for something, educate in some way, or entertain so that you feel inspired to use your voice too. This is episode 147, and you can find the show notes on my website, thepharmacistvoice.com. Just click on the podcast tab and search for episode 147. Just as a reminder, please know that I am a parent of a child with autism. I am not a developmental pediatrician, a child psychiatrist, a child psychologist, or a pediatric neurologist. I am not treating your child. This is my disclaimer that I just want to share in this episode today so that you know that I'm not trying to diagnose, treat, prevent, or cure autism. I'm just sharing my family's story. I'd like to add just one more disclaimer. This episode may make you want to be a stay-at-home mom. If you're a working mom, it may make you question yourself. Please don't. If you can't be a stay-at-home mom, you are still a good mom. We moms struggle with this, by the way. If you don't know this, I had my kids young. I made my choices. I wasn't that into my career, so I became a stay-at-home mom. Full-time mom, part-time pharmacist. You will have to make your own choices. Just do the best you can. Just be there for your kids. I'm sure you know that, but I just want you to know what I'm thinking about before I share my story, because it may sound like I think my way is the best way or the only way on the planet. Please know that I see working moms as equals. I just don't know how you do it all. I couldn't, but that doesn't mean you can't. And please know that I don't judge you if you work full time, okay? All right, let's move on. Next, I want to tell you the story about Kraig's diagnosis. Are there any days in your life that you remember just clear as day? Like everybody says they remember where they were if they were alive when Kennedy was shot. Like everybody remembers where they were and what they were doing when they got the news, right? Just like people of my generation, I'm 43. I certainly remember when September 11th, 2001 hit. I remember what I was doing. I remember where I was. I remember worrying about everything. So that's one of those examples. When Kraig got diagnosed, that is a day that is permanently burned in my brain. It is September 6th, 2005. I will always remember that day. I believe it was the day after Labor Day, 2005. I was working part-time as a pharmacist because I just had a baby. My second baby, actually. Derrick was born in April of 2005. And I continued working part-time. And I never went back full-time because of Kraig's diagnosis. So what's it like having a kid get diagnosed with autism? This is just my family's experience. My husband was there, I was there, Kraig, of course, was there, and Derrick was there, and he was actually nursing. So I had my hands full, I'm sure you can imagine. I think Kraig was on my lap, and Derrick was nursing, and my husband was in his own chair, and we went to see Dr. Richard Solomon. He's a wonderful developmental pediatrician at the Ann Arbor Center for Developmental Pediatrics in Ann Arbor, Michigan. He's retiring this year, actually, after 40 years of being a developmental pediatrician, one of the best in the country. It only took less than an hour for Dr. Solomon to decide to diagnose Kraig with autism. It was quick. and he actually made an audio tape of it that I'm going to have to ask him for permission to use, maybe on a future podcast episode, maybe next April, for Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month. Anyways, he just spoke into this tape recorder and said, basically, I feel comfortable diagnosing Kraig with a case of mild autism. We want him to follow up in 6 months and then start on X, Y, and Z therapies. It was like speech therapy, occupational therapy. But I didn't hear much after the diagnosis. Was it a surprise? No. I mean, clearly there was something wrong with Kraig. I'll get into what was he like at the time of his diagnosis in just a minute. But I just want to say that it was like a bomb went off in my head. Like, hold on, this is really happening. It answered a lot of questions. I didn't feel like I lost my son or anything. Some people have certain feelings. I'm not invalidating any of those. I had my own. I felt a sense of purpose. Like this thing that has been troubling my son, his lack of speech, his repetitive behaviors, it has a name, and that name is autism. And there are ways to improve his skills and help him reach his full potential. So I heard a lot all at once. So when I say a bomb went off in my mind, I heard, your son has diagnosis, but I also heard, now you need to get him special needs preschool, and you need to get him early intervention, and you need to do this and that and the other thing. So as a pharmacist, we like to make sense of things, and I made a list. And Dr. Solomon gave me a lot to look at and a CD from his Play Project Therapy, which is Play and Language for Autistic Youngsters, Play. That program has developed a lot over the last 20 years or so. Anyways, I had to come up with a plan because my husband was leaving for a business trip, I think literally 2 hours after that diagnosis was handed down. My husband has a heart. He's a good guy, but he's an engineer and he can follow a plan too. And his plan was to get on that plane. I believe he was in his Six Sigma black belt training somewhere in North Carolina. So he was leaving the airport in Detroit. We lived at the time in Toledo, Ohio. Our nearest major airport was Detroit. So he drove from Ann Arbor, Michigan over to Detroit, Michigan, took off in his plane for North Carolina, and spent the week away from us. During that time, I read a lot of stuff. I read all the papers and materials that Dr. Solomon provided us with. I listened to the tape again, which was hugely helpful because, like I said, it was like a bomb went off in my head and I wasn't really thinking straight. I was making a mental list of all the things I had to do, but some of the stuff I had heard about for the first time ever in Dr. Solomon's office right at that moment. I watched the Play Project CD. I learned a little bit about how to engage Kraig and interact with him. I made about 1 million phone calls that week and tried to get Kraig evaluated for services. It was really something. What was Kraig like at the time of his diagnosis? I'm going to tell you some of his features. I don't know if this is everything. Kraig was a hand flapper. Okay, he would flap his hands, which is a stereotypical repetitive behavior that young children with autism sometimes have. He would also spin the wheels on his toys. For example, if there was a toy shopping cart, he would flip it over, kind of like somebody would flip over a bike to change a flat tire. He would spin the wheels. When I would get together with some of my mom friends for playgroups, he would isolate himself and play by himself instead of with the other kids. He definitely did not talk. He was 2.5 years old, which can be normal, but typically kids start picking up words, they babble, they make sounds. Kraig did none of that. Eye contact was a problem. Let's see. Oh, Kraig also led us by the hand to show us things, and he gave us things without telling us what to do with them. That was his way of communicating, like taking us by the hand. Hey, come here, I want to show you this. Or giving me something like a juice box. Hey, lady, put the straw in there for me. But he didn't communicate what he wanted. He was constantly frustrated. We're really lucky that he didn't throw tantrums, but that certainly could have happened. I think you get the idea. And in case you're wondering kind of what he's like now, he's still not talking. He can't read, write, or speak. And as he's grown, his behaviors have changed too. I mentioned hand flapping and spinning wheels. He doesn't really do that anymore. He does spin objects. For example, he will take a book or a magazine when we're at Kroger checking out in the checkout lane. He'll take a magazine and spin the magazine. People will stop and watch because it's quite the balancing act that he can do. What else is he like? He still prefers to be by himself. He does not engage others purposefully, to play with others. He likes to be by himself. He doesn't talk. I already mentioned that. He still leads us around, although not as much. He uses his communication device. He uses a communication device to express his wants and needs. But just because he has that device doesn't mean that he knows how to use all the words on it. He still brings us things without telling us what he wants us to do with them. I'm not saying that it's annoying, but at this point, we know how to handle that. We challenge him to tell us something in a full sentence, at least 3 words, like, I want pretzels, or I want this juice box, whatever. Knowing what to do for him to challenge him to up his game and set the bar high is really important. We've learned all that stuff over time. It has not been easy, but this will give you an idea of what he's like right now at the age of 19. I mentioned earlier that when Kraig was young, right when he got diagnosed, I wondered what he would be like someday. There were lots of kids that Kraig went to school with, lots of kids he went to preschool with especially, who eventually outgrew their diagnosis. I want you to know that that can happen. It did not happen to my son. Kraig did not outgrow his diagnosis. He still has autism. Some other kids are going off to college. Some are finishing high school and looking to go to college. Some will be able to secure full-time employment. You get the picture. I am happy for those classmates, really. I am also a little jealous. I want that for Kraig too. I can't help it. I think that's very normal. Listen, none of us know what's going to happen. I didn't know what was going to happen. No one knew how any of our kids would turn out. Not the teacher, not us. Only God, right? So, on that topic, I want to give you a little bit of advice that comes from a really weird place. It's the Ben Affleck movie, Paycheck. Ben Affleck, Paycheck. All right. If you've never seen this movie, I think it came out right around the time Kraig was born, around 2000, 2005, somewhere in there. And from what I can remember, it was about a man who illegally reverse engineers other people's inventions for profit. Definitely a crime, a crime in the future, of course. And then, okay, this is the futuristic part. He gets his memory erased so that he doesn't remember committing those crimes. Crazy, right? We definitely don't have that today. There was a line in that movie, though. That's what I really want to share with you. That line in that movie has really stuck with me. And I think it really applies to being a parent of a child with autism. And here it is. Here's that line. If you show someone their future, they have no future. If you take away the mystery, you take away the hope. That has really stuck with me. That's a deep thought right here from Kim Newlove. But if you really think about it, if somebody knows that their future is going to turn out a certain way, I don't know if they're going to try as hard to get that end result. What does this quote mean? Why did I bring up the movie Paycheck? Why did I bring up this line from Paycheck? It's because if someone showed me, when my son was 2, showed me a neurotypical adult version of my son Kraig at the time that he was diagnosed with autism, so future Kraig and age 2 Kraig at the same time, if somebody would have told me I would go from age 2 to age 18 and he would someday be neurotypical, I don't know if I would have worked so hard to make it happen. I don't know that I would have made the same choices. That is a truly deep thought. So I want to caution you, if we know the future, we may not try as hard. I don't know if you agree, but I just want to caution you. Worry. Just worry as much as you need to. Make the choices you need to. Set the vision. Work toward helping your child reach their full potential. Why do I say this? Because I want to caution you that if you know your child's going to be okay someday, you may not bother trying to help them. I'm trying not to project my fears on you, but I want to tell you these things because this is going to lead to another piece of advice that I want to share. There have been times in my son's life that I feel like people have looked into a crystal ball and told me that my child would be okay someday. They would tell me what he would be like someday. They would tell me he was going to talk someday. And I want to tell you that may happen to you. And if that happens, you need to take that with a grain of salt or run the other way. I'm not trying to kill your hope here. I am just cautioning you that no one knows how your child is going to turn out. No one. Only God. Again, I don't know how many times practitioners told me that my son was going to talk someday. It happened a lot of different ones. He's 19. He still doesn't talk. I'm not saying he never will. I'm not saying that I have lost hope or optimism. Maybe someday he will talk. But right now, I can tell you they were all wrong. He is not talking. Some people, when he was 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, said, "Oh, I think he's going to talk pretty soon." I did think Kraig was going to talk, but he never did. I would encourage you not to invite people to tell you what your child's going to be like someday. If they ask permission to share, that's up to you if you want to listen. But just keep in mind they don't have a crystal ball, and you need to set the vision for what you hope your child would be like someday, and then take action accordingly. Now, I'm going to give you an example of a vision statement. This is the vision statement from my son Kraig's IEP document, his individualized education plan in public school. Here we go, and I quote, "We want Kraig to feel good about himself. If he's able to work, we want Kraig to have a job that he's good at and enjoys. We want him to live in an environment that allows him to achieve as much independence as possible while still providing enough supervision and support to keep Kraig safe from hurting himself or others. We want Kraig to have things in his life that he looks forward to: family gatherings, activities with friends, travel, experiences, playing games, reading books, staying active outdoors, eating favorite foods, and so on." End quote. That's the end of the vision statement from school, but I'd like to add something. This is not written on his vision statement, but this is part of my husband and my vision. We want Kraig to be able to get his wants and needs met using a total communication approach. That includes sign language, picture cards, verbal speech, head nods and shakes, and a communication device. That's the end of that addition right there. We want Kraig to get his wants and needs met using a total communication approach. That includes sign language, picture cards, verbal speech, head nods and head shakes, and a communication device. I know I just said that twice, but I think that's important. Communication is huge. It is hugely desirable. That is the biggest skill I wish my son had. And how do we make that happen? Well, it's up to Team Kraig to make it happen. I'm telling you right now, it takes a village to raise a child with autism. Literally, there are a lot of people trying to help Kraig and meet that vision that my husband and I have set for him. We're going to start talking a little bit about diagnosis at this point. For any parents who are concerned that their child may have autism, I want to encourage you to start with your pediatrician, just your general pediatrician. Get a referral to a developmental pediatrician or a child psychiatrist or a child psychologist or a pediatric neurologist. There are 4 different clinicians that I would recommend. Again, they are developmental pediatrician, child psychiatrist, child psychologist, or pediatric neurologist. Your child needs an evaluation. That's how you get a diagnosis. And just a heads up, as Christina had talked about, waiting lists can be years long. I think her son has been waiting for an official diagnosis from one of those clinicians for like 3 years. It only took me a few months, but I live in Ohio. She lives in Las Vegas. The demand may be different. So if you have concerns, start today. Write down your concerns. Try to get into a clinician that it has availability and that you also agree with. Maybe they have a website and you just get a good feeling about it, or you talk to your friends or your pediatrician and they recommend that person. I'm just saying, if you have concerns, start today. Those waiting lists can be years long, and your child probably needs help today. Pediatricians may also have lists of resources, so even if you can't get a formal diagnosis, your pediatrician, just your general pediatrician, may be able to point you in the direction of some providers that can help, and maybe even a dentist who can help with children on the spectrum, which can be really helpful. My son could not go to a regular dentist. He had to go to a dentist that was for kids only, and not only just kids, but they really have skills and experience treating kids with autism. That was a big help. Let's say that your child is on the waiting list for a diagnosis and that you need an evaluation for services, not a diagnosis. Again, we just talked about that just a little bit. I would recommend, if your child is birth through age 3, so maybe they're 9 to 12 months old and you've already got concerns, that is a normal concern to have. There's something in your state or your local area called early intervention, or a Help Me Grow program. Your pediatrician should know about this. Otherwise, just Google it, and you can actually get your child evaluated for services like speech and occupational therapy and playgroups, and just get connected and get educated by people who know about kids with challenges. Now, after the age of 3 years, it's okay to still seek help. Not everybody gets help right away. My son didn't get diagnosed until he was 2.5. My mom, who's a teacher, retired teacher now, had concerns when my son was 9 months old. I didn't understand what autism was, all the different signs and symptoms. And once I understood, I expressed concern to my pediatrician, and it took 6 months for him to be able to see enough that he was concerned too. I almost made it to my son's age of 3 before I got him help. It happens. So don't beat yourself up if you're listening to this. Contact your local public school system. An evaluation from the public school system can qualify your child for services. It's totally normal to do that. Lots of help to be had. I want to say that if your children are, not diagnosed, but you want services, I want to say that I really identify with how frustrating that can be to not know your options. Getting help can be a very lonely journey. A diagnosis of autism can lead to treatment and support. Some people say they don't like labels. You are entitled to have a child without a label, but just know that labels lead to treatment and support and services for the family are important. You don't have to do this alone. Next, I want to talk just a little bit, this is basically a 5-point list actually, about my son's diagnosis from my family's experience. So, number 1, we went to his regular pediatrician and we got a referral to a developmental pediatrician. Once we got to the developmental pediatrician, like I said in the beginning, September 6th, 2005, he got diagnosed with mild autism. Now, when we started getting connected with services in our county, they had recommended that we get a second opinion, and so we went to a pediatric neurologist, and Kraig got diagnosed with a brain aphasia of the brain. I can't remember exactly what it was. We ended up keeping the autism diagnosis in order to get treatment and support. We also got connected with our County Board of Developmental Disabilities. At the time, we lived in Lucas County, Ohio. Kraig qualified for services right away when he was 2, and he got the early intervention type services, and the early intervention folks helped us transition into the school system and get an IEP when Kraig was 3. So you transition from early intervention into school at the age of 3, even though kindergarten doesn't start until 5, because there's some special needs preschool available. Part of being connected to Lucas County Department of Developmental Disabilities has to do with something kind of unique, I guess. We moved, And being connected with them helped us pass the baton directly to our next county that we lived in, which was Wood County. So, as far as getting a diagnosis and services, this is like, the cascade of how things happened for us. And finally, Kraig was in public school. He went to special needs preschool, not in the public system, but the public school provided the IEP and some funding in the form of the Ohio Autism Scholarship. So we got like $20,000 a year to help pay for services. Let me tell you, it wasn't enough, but it did pay for some. There's a lot that we had to pay for out of pocket. So just to review, pediatrician, developmental pediatrician, pediatric neurologist, county boards of developmental disabilities, public school, and that's kind of how we got from diagnosis to services. Let's talk about therapies next. There are official therapies and what I would call unofficial therapies. There are things that can be used as therapy, even though a credentialed individual is not providing the therapy. This is something that I would say is a gray area, but this is stuff that still helps, so I'm going to mention it. It sounds nebulous, I know. But remember, I am a parent. I am sharing my family's experiences, and I'm just trying to help someone who might have a young child with autism and might want to know what I did from my child's 2-year-old diagnosis until, age 19 here. So let's talk about those unofficial therapies or tools that helped Kraig first. This list has about 5 things on it. I'm going to go through them very quickly. And if you're new to the show, let me just say that I love using lists. So there will be these lists in the show notes. First, let me just say that social emotional development is important. Basically, we enrolled Kraig in a whole bunch of classes that typical kids took. I'm just going to name 3 different things here. Gymboree, which I don't know if that's even a class anymore, but it was super fun. Kinder Music, which is like a music class for kids. And YMCA classes. We did T-ball, we did swim lessons, we did cooking class, we did basketball. There was all kinds of stuff. Kraig did not always do what the other kids were doing or follow the directions, but he tried and we all had fun. And just a side story, Lucas County Department of Developmental Disabilities, or Lucas County DD as it's called, helped us become members of the Y. They gave us a free membership. That was huge for us. We previously didn't even know how to join the Y or if it was right for us. A free membership for our family got Kraig included in all kinds of activities in the greater Toledo area communities like Toledo, Sylvania, Perrysburg, Lambertville, etc. We got to use a bunch of swimming pools and we had a lot of fun. Yay, YMCA. Love it. All right, number 2, my second thing on the list here, picture cards. We used the Picture Exchange Communication System, or PECS, but we didn't necessarily use the stick figures that are usually associated with PECS. We used Google Images. We made our own. And just to give you some examples of something very personal that we did, for picture cards, we made a restaurant menu. Literally a menu of restaurants. Do you want to go to Bob Evans? Do you want to go to McDonald's? Do you want to go to Max and Irma's? You get the idea. There was literally a manila folder with picture cards on it. We also have an ice cream menu. But then we also have a ton of individual picture cards too. We don't use them as much anymore because Kraig has a communication device. But back in the day, before we had the communication device, or even when he was just getting onboarded with it, we had these picture cards where he could, touch a picture and we would understand that he wanted something to do with that. All right. Number 3, Kraig did the Lose the Training Wheels camp at the age of 8. Basically, he learned how to ride a 2-wheeled bike when he was 8. I know that's just a little bit late, but not too much. And those people know how to help a kid lose the training wheels. It was a great program. I have tons of pictures. It was awesome. Number 4, we used weighted products. We still do. Weighted blankets on his bed to help him sleep, and it calms him down. He used to use weighted vests, but we kind of don't use that anymore. And number 5, we met Kraig's sensory needs using swings and mats and shaving foam and all kinds of things that he could touch. Now, let's move on to official therapies, tools, and strategies. There are a lot of things on this list. We covered a lot of them in episode 146, Christina and me, but I just want you to know I'm going to go through these quickly. There are probably other therapies out there, and they're not going to be on this list because these are just things that Kraig tried. For example, Christina mentioned feeding therapy for her son Alex. Kraig didn't do feeding therapy. It's totally valid, but that's just one example of another therapy that did not make it on this list. There are many, many others out there. Number 1, diets. We didn't do any. I think we can all agree that a child benefits from a low-sugar diet, but I didn't do anything in particular. Number 2, supplements. None. I didn't do any ever. I never got nutrigenomic testing or pharmacogenomic testing. I am interested in nutrigenomic and pharmacogenomic testing, but hey, in 2005, that didn't exist, and I'm still catching up with the technology. Number 3, we already talked about early intervention. Kraig did playgroups and had individual home visits from the age of, 2.5 until 3. Number 4, speech therapy. Kraig first started speech therapy at the University of Toledo at the age of 2 before his diagnosis because we knew there was a problem. They worked on all kinds of stuff. Kraig has a problem moving his mouth. It's called apraxia of the mouth. I'm not sure if he has dyslexia, dysgraphia, or other problems, but he for sure has a delay in his receptive and expressive speech. All right, once Kraig got his diagnosis, we switched speech therapy to Rehab Dynamics at the age of 2.5. Rehab Dynamics is a therapy center for children in Toledo, Ohio. And by the time he was 3 years old, he was starting to use a communication device. I can't remember the name of his first one. I want to say it was called Advantage, and it was made by the Prentke-Romich Company. I'll put a link in the show notes. By the time Kraig was 4 years old, we were renting a communication device. I think we might have rented one until he was 5, and by then we owned one. It was our first one. He's had several since. We love that. We love the communication device. I would highly recommend using one if you have a nonverbal child. He's had one ever since, anyways. Had one ever since the age of 4 or 5. Now, the name of his current device is the Accent 1000. The Accent 1000, also made by the Prentke-Romich Company. Fantastic device. And I would just say that given that Kraig's 19 years old, he's been using communication devices for 15 some years. I've talked about Kraig's communication devices in other episodes, and I am embarrassed to admit that I did not want one at first. And this is an embarrassing story, real quick. I wanted Kraig to just learn how to talk with vocal speech, with his mouth. So I remember, sorry about all the sighs, but I'm really kind of embarrassed about this. I remember telling the speech therapist that, hey, I want you to kind of back off with this communication device and just do what you got to do to get him to talk with his mouth. I really admire his speech therapist. At the time, her name was Beth, and Beth told me that I needed to consider the possibility that Kraig was not going to be able to talk. It took a lot of spine for her to have that conversation with me. I had no idea. I just thought it was, this cool new technology. And I was kind of self-centered, thinking, talking with your mouth is the only way. She taught me that was the right thing for Kraig, having options. If he ends up talking with his mouth, great. We'll just, donate this device to somebody else. But she needed to open my mind. I think I was a little closed-minded back then. I want you to know that if your child needs help, just have an open mind. And if a speech therapist is recommending something, it's for your child's own good. And you need to let them be right so you can get it right for your child. Real quick, the things that Kraig works on are the same things he started off at UT doing. The expressive and receptive language skills and the total communication approach. He can do just a couple of signs. Once he learned the sign for more, everything was more. Cookie was more, the sign for more. Anyways, if you've got a kid with autism, you know what I mean. If they're unsuccessful using signs, they usually pick one, and that means everything to them. Speech works on getting Kraig's needs met. He, at this point, is working on building sentences so that people other than family can understand him. That's important. Kraig has done, all right, this is the 6th thing on my list here, occupational therapy. Kraig has been doing occupational therapy ever since his diagnosis. He started off at Rehab Dynamics in Toledo, Ohio. I think around age 2.5, right when he got his diagnosis. There might have been a waiting list for services for a month or two. And I think he stopped at rehab at 16.5 and just kept on doing it at high school instead. I know a lot of this is personal, and some people may think, oh my gosh, why are you telling your son's story here? But if it helps somebody, I'm willing to share. So here we go. He gets occupational therapy through school at this point. And what does he work on? All kinds of stuff. Fine motor skills, self-help skills, vocational skills. He's got apraxia of the body. That means that he doesn't necessarily understand how to move his body. And he's also got sensory integration dysfunction. So they have him on a sensory diet, which helps calm him down. Number 7, something that we also tried was the Simonis sound therapy. It's an occupational therapy tool. If you've ever seen me in a Zoom meeting wearing headphones, those are the headphones from Kraig's therapy. We bought them around the year 2006, and we still have them. They're like 16 years old. Sennheiser is the brand, and Sennheiser makes good stuff. But technology has really advanced. Those were open-backed headphones. Closed-back headphones are the way to go because they really block out noise. I actually have some of them in my booth right now, and closed back is just different. I'm going to tap on them. It's hard plastic. All right. The therapist discontinued the sound therapy probably when he was about 10 to 12 years old. I can't remember exactly, but it was worth trying. Kraig has done play project therapy. That is play and language for autistic youngsters. That was created by Dr. Richard Solomon, Solomon, Richard Solomon. The play project is usually just for young children with autism. If you want to learn more, visit aacenter.org, aacenter.org. There's a link in the show notes. In my own words, it's a lot like doing improv comedy with kids. Improv comedy. Yes, I actually said that. It's not like comedy per se. It's more about yes-anding what the child is doing. You're following their lead. You're having their kind of fun. You're joining in with what they're doing and letting them let you into their world. It's worth a look. Number 9, we talked a little bit earlier about public school. Once Kraig got on the IEP at the age of 3 through Toledo Public Schools in 2006, we were able to take those goals and some funding and go to Capable Kids Preschool. And that was, from age 3.5 to 6.5 at least. Now, during his preschool years, we moved. We moved from Lucas County to Wood County, from Toledo to Perrysburg, and that was back in 2007, and you better believe we moved because of the school system. We needed something that was a little more inclusive for kids with challenges. Perrysburg was better than Toledo. All right, number 10, ABA. It's Applied Behavior Analysis. We went to a special needs preschool called Capable Kids. I just mentioned it a minute ago. It was in Toledo, Ohio. Kraig did 3 years of preschool there. It was structured, and they drilled Kraig for skills, and they used his motivation, whatever that was on that day, to get him to participate. Now, that school is different from a public school because it's run by a board-certified behavior analyst. If you have a child with autism and you don't know what a board-certified behavior analyst, or BCBA, is, that is something that you're going to want to get familiar with. These are highly desirable, highly trained teachers who can find patterns in what works for your child and help them learn. So Kraig learned through the school, and he also had home ABA. It got expensive. Paying for all these therapies, whether it be education, occupational therapy, speech therapy, music, all these classes, it was $35,000 to $50,000 a year. Do you have to do all that? No, the public school offers a preschool, but that wasn't what we thought Kraig needed. That's not what his IEP team had decided. So there you go. Let's move on to number 11. When Kraig was 6.5, he went to kindergarten a year late, and that's totally fine. All of his grade level peers are graduating this year, by the way, next month in May 2022. And Kraig will probably be in public school until he's 22. Why? Because of the opportunities, for sure. He needs to learn vocational skills, but also he's just not ready for adulthood, for adult daycare, if that's what he ends up in. We want to see if he can actually work and have a job, kind of like I called out in the vision statement. All right, number 12, using social stories to teach about social situations, such as, we're going to the doctor, or you need a shot. You can use YouTube these days. There's probably apps for it out there too. There's probably a way to make an album on your iPad or tablet or your smartphone. Let me just tell you, social stories help. They help your child understand what's about to happen. With the technology today, you can much more easily create social stories than back when Kraig was just, a kindergartner. It is so much easier these days, and it really helps. Social stories. Moving on, number 13. The Perceptual Motor Development, or PMD clinic at the University of Toledo in their kinesiology department. It was lots of fun. It was Kraig's first swim and gym program. Kraig got to play with really fun gross motor and fine motor toys. And he got to go swimming. He learned how to follow rules and routines. He played follow the leader. I wouldn't say play, but he learned how to follow a leader. And he tried to learn some imitation skills like cutting and drawing and things like that. He learned how to take directions from non-family adults. So I would recommend, if you have access to a university and they have programs for kids with special needs, check that out. Ours was called the Perceptual Motor Development, or PMD clinic, and it was at the University of Toledo. Kraig would have been about 3 years old when we went there. Moving on, number 14, Kraig went to a swim and gym program, swim, SWIM, and gym, GYM, swim and gym, at Sunshine Children's Home. It was very much like the Perceptual Motor Development Clinic, but it was just at a different location. Sunshine Children's Home is a facility that caters to individuals with challenges. Number 15, therapeutic horseback riding. This isn't for everybody, but Kraig really liked it when he was a lot younger, probably starting at age 4. And he looked so cute in his cowboy boots. It was called the Lucky Riders Program. The facility is called Serenity Farms. It's now closed. I think it closed last year in 2021, but it still has a Facebook page under Serenity Farm Equestrian Center. I think that we also went to Sunshine. Yes, we definitely went to Sunshine, now that I think about it. We went to Sunshine Children's Home also for therapeutic horseback riding, and Kraig enjoyed that. It was like a sensory experience. Number 16, summer camps. Kraig was busy every year from age 2.5 on up, I guess, for summers. Kraig went to summer camps for lots of reasons. Social skills, working on goals like occupational therapy stuff, speech therapy stuff, social emotional type stuff, following rules and routines. He went to Rehab Dynamics. He went to Capable Kids. There's a couple of other places he went to. We're very lucky that in Northwest Ohio we have some stuff. Right now, he focuses on learning job skills. So right now, as a teenager, he's really focused on that transition to adulthood, and we're really trying to see if he's able to work, even if it's only an hour a day, Monday through Friday. That's what our goal is right now. If he can start with that and move up, that's great. I think that would be better than dayhab, or I guess some people call it adult daycare. I'd really rather not go there if possible. I'm not saying that's like the worst case scenario. It's just I have a vision. I really want him to be able to contribute and find a job that he enjoys and he's good at. If it helps anyone, I just want to share the organization who's sponsoring Kraig's summer school program. It's called Bittersweet Farms. Bittersweet Farms. You can find it at bittersweetfarms.org. Now, if you're looking for a company to donate money to, Bittersweet Farms is a good one. They help individuals of usually adults with autism. They help individuals of varying abilities to reach their full potential. Places that help our friends with challenges are very important to us, and we just want to make sure they're still running because Craig's going to need those places someday. He needs them now. Moving on to number 17, a toilet training consultant. Kim Renner was our toilet training consultant. She is a board-certified behavior analyst. Remember earlier I mentioned that Kraig had a board-certified behavior analyst for his preschool teacher at Capable Kids. Our toilet training consultant was Kim Renner. She was a parent of a child with autism, and he was a teenager, I think, at the time that she worked with us. She's a special gal. She had a waiting list, a 1-year waiting list for Kraig to get help. We got on the waiting list when Kraig was 4.5. We had already tried for a whole entire year to get Kraig toilet trained, and we couldn't even get Kim to help us until Kraig was 5.5. Boy, were we ever glad when she had an opening for us. She took a lot of data, and it was actually good timing because Derrick, our younger son, was just about to go to preschool and he had to be potty trained too. Everything that we used for Kraig worked fantastic, like overnight with Derrick. But Kraig, on the other hand, was a tough nut to crack. We had to work on urinating in a toilet, having a BM in a toilet, and nighttime training. We attacked them one at a time, and it literally took years to get all of it done. And once we got him toilet trained, having him initiate a trip to the bathroom was still a challenge. He liked to be prompted. It wasn't until probably he was 13 or so that he independently took himself to the bathroom all the time, and we are grateful. Money well spent. And finally, number 18, Kraig's official therapy was a therapy dog. And this was kind of my husband and my influence. We applied for a therapy dog for Kraig when he was 5, and they do a fantastic job at the Ability Center of Northwest Ohio connecting individuals who need a dog with a dog that's got the right personality. I actually was so happy about our experience that I had the director of the Ability Center Assistance Dogs program on my podcast. I can't remember which episode that was, but it was, I want to say it was probably a year and a half ago. I wish I had the episode number. I'll put it in the show notes. Her name is Jenny Barlos. But anyways, Kraig got a golden retriever, and his name was Bond. Bond was on Team Kraig for 6 years. He was a great dog. He was a great part of the team. He did things real quick. He did things for Kraig. Like he got Kraig to do things that you would just, it's like magic. You wouldn't have predicted this. Kraig actually had a hard time going straight from our front door, the front door of our house, to the bus, just down the driveway. He would get distracted and go to the car or a tree or see something. And if you just gave him Bond's leash, Bond would take Kraig from the house to the bus without fail. It was magical. Another thing that was really cool was that Bond motivated Kraig in ways that it's hard to explain. Kraig had a hard time learning how to scoop things. You know, like some people need to cook, right? So they need to scoop sugar, or maybe they need to scoop something. Well, in Kraig's case, he was motivated to feed this dog. He scooped the dog food for Bond. He learned how to scoop in minutes, just because of this dog. We used to bake cookies all the time. He would not scoop flour or sugar for me, but he would scoop dog food and he would feed that dog, which was so sweet. So therapy dogs, do not underestimate them. They're magical. And also, the kids at school, we brought the dog to school. The kids at school would read to Kraig and his dog in small groups. I mean, who doesn't want to get out of class to read to a dog? That was awesome. So many good years with Bond. Such a great experience. Yay, therapy dogs. All right, that wraps up the list of therapies and treatments and tools that we tried for Kraig's autism. I know talking about dogs left me on a happy note there, but I just want to say, kind of on a serious note, that having a child with autism has taught me that I need to ask for help. That's right, I need to ask for help. I couldn't do any of this alone. I couldn't go back to school to become a special ed teacher. I couldn't go back to become a speech therapist or an occupational therapist or a board-certified behavior analyst. I couldn't do all of this on my own. I needed to ask for help. And my husband was right there on the same page with me. I was very lucky we were on the same page. We both wanted to help Kraig, and we recognized that we couldn't do it alone. And if you are somebody who has a hard time asking for help, I want to invite you to get over it. No one is going to swoop in and figure out what your child needs, just like I had to figure out what my child needed, and then I had to search for solutions for him. You have to do the same, okay? That is your job as a parent. That was my husband's job and my job as a couple. We attacked it together, okay? There is help literally all over the place. It may seem like it takes forever to get off of a waiting list. That may be true, but you have to keep trying. If you know what you want for your child, or rather, you know what they need and you have a vision for it and you haven't pursued it, start today, okay? So let me just say that again. If you know what your child needs and you have a vision for it and you haven't pursued it, start today. It is not too late. Use your voice. Talk to the County Board of Developmental Disabilities, find a diagnosing physician or a psychologist, get a plan. Talk to your local public school, join a Facebook group, listen to podcasts. They didn't have those back in 2005 when my son got diagnosed. If they did, I should have been listening to them, but they didn't. There's so much that you can do. And one thing that I have learned, especially from the Ability Center of Northwest Ohio, is that you must think ability first. Think ability first. I challenge you to get started today. I know that's tough love, but hey, that's what I'm here for. I want you to know what I did, and I want you to feel inspired to help your child too. That was a little heavy, so let's lighten things up. There is a lot of fun to be had when you have a child with autism, and I got to do a lot of fun stuff because I was a full-time stay-at-home mom and only a part-time pharmacist. Let me tell you all about it. Selfishly, I'm going to talk about myself for a couple of minutes. I don't do this very often, and sometimes I don't like to, but hey, I want you to know what my last 19 years was like. Here we go. Now, because I was a full-time stay-at-home mom and a part-time pharmacist, I was there not just for the daytime stuff, but also for the evenings, weekends, and holidays. I also joined a support group for other stay-at-home moms when Kraig was, like 9 or 10 months old. And because of this support group, which we called Mom's Group, very clever, right? Mom's Group, I got to have lots of friends. And I got together with them a lot. We had play groups, I would say once a week at first, and we got to have mom's nights out probably once a month, which is more than I go out now. Many of my new friends were teachers who, like me, became stay-at-home moms, and later on, years later, they went back to teaching. Some of the non-teachers moved on to other things. Some women stayed at home and never went back to work. There was a big mix of people. I hope you can imagine. That's the reason I bring it up. Now, you can be a pharmacist part-time, but you can't be a part-time teacher or do part-time other professions. You know this. We're kind of lucky that we can still participate in our profession part-time, even when you're basically a full-time stay-at-home mom. I worked pretty much evenings and weekends. When our kids were newborns, these women wanted to be stay-at-home moms, and that's what they were. We were all a pretty social bunch. We were very good at organizing stuff, too. With that many teachers involved, come on. We were very good at organizing stuff. So our group held tight. We just organized stuff and we coordinated our schedules, and we met until our younger kids started preschool. So if you can imagine, that would be like age 3 to 5. We still keep in touch even today. It's mostly on Facebook and Instagram, but we were there for each other. And I just wanted to share that. I had a support system when my kids were young, and I needed it. And looking back on it, I loved it. I loved it at the time, but I look back on that as time well spent, good memories. After talking about all those therapies and stuff, now talking about the fun stuff, this is cool. Let's keep talking about fun stuff. But I will focus it on Kraig now. I'm done bragging about my stay-at-home mom days with all my mommy friends. So as far as Kraig's concerned, we aggressively pursued fun. Like when he was first diagnosed, we were like, okay, we got to find a way to engage him and help him make progress. We still have a lot of fun, and I would highly recommend that whatever you do, have fun when you engage with your child. And what does engage mean, just in case that's a term that you don't use? It means back and forth exchanges, like they're with you as much as you're with them. They want to be with you just as much as you want to be with them. Engaged. In summary, do whatever helps you engage with your child. Now, in concrete terms, what does that mean? What does that look like? We bought toys and we spent hours and hours doing fun stuff with and without toys. There is a long list that I want to share with you of fun stuff. I'll just go through it quickly. I don't want to leave anything out in case this inspires you in some way to have fun with your kid with autism. And let me just say, I have a typical kid, and he had a blast with his mom and dad, us, as he was growing up too. Hanging out with my kids and having a blast with my husband was the last 19 years. Honestly, I'm such a family person. Both of my kids had a blast. We treated both of them very well. And I would say that, it's impossible to treat your kids equally, but we paid just as much attention to Derrick in those early days as we did to Kraig. It was awesome. So many good memories. All right, there's more than like 20 things on this list, so I'm going to rip through it real fast. Here we go. Number 1, we listened to music. Lots of music. At first, it was kid music like Jim Gill, Greg and Steve, Baby Einstein. As Kraig got older, he developed his own likes and dislikes. He loves classical music. Right now, he loves it. But he also loves country, like Florida Georgia Line, Darius Rucker, and the Zac Brown Band. Thanks to his younger brother, he also loves classic rap, too. There's so many songs that I could list, but if you throw on Sir Mix-a-Lot, I Like Big Butts, Kraig will smile. It's great. All right, number 2, we watched videos. Scholastic videos like Chicka Chicka Boom Boom, Trashy Town, things like that. Anything that would help entertain and engage him was fun. We also watched a ton of Baby Einstein, and we played some computer games. Back in 2005, computer games were just as popular, I would say, as playing with like a PlayStation or something like that. It was 2005. Anyways, moving on, number 3, we watched TV shows like Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, Mythbusters, and as they got older, we watched 100% of the Marvel movies before we watched Endgame. If you have not watched all of the Marvel movies in order before you watch Endgame, you're missing out. It's fun. I've got teenagers. I watched all of those movies with them, and it was a blast. Number 4, when they were young, we gave piggyback rides. It was fun. Number 5, we put Kraig on horse rides at any carnival and county fair that we could afford to do that at. Number 6, we played games with simple rules. We still do this. Games like Candyland Castle, Connect 4, Don't Break the Ice. There's so many. Number 7, this one's personal, riding on the back of my motorcycles. That's right, I ride motorcycles. I'm on bike number 5. I absolutely love them. Kraig started riding with me when he was 9. Due to an incident where he fell off at 2 miles per hour and pushed me off the front of the bike. So just imagine my passenger in the back falling forward and knocking me off. During a turn, I foot planted and hit the dashboard of my bike with my chest at like 2 miles per hour going around a turn. Bike did not topple. Nobody actually fell into the street. Due to that incident, though, we don't ride together anymore. I ride solo. Anyways, number 8. We bought a backyard play set, one of those that has a fort, with the awning over top of it. And oh man, it was so fun. It had swings, and we also bought a sandbox and a teeter-totter. Backyard play sets are awesome. Yeah, this is how I spent all my money when I was in my 20s. Anyways, we had so much fun with this stuff, though. Number 9, Kraig is too big for a backyard playset. It's long gone. Now we have a bench swing, and that's great too. Number 10, we practiced blowing out candles. And that may not sound like fun, but I'll tell you what, it took a lot of practicing to get Kraig to be able to blow out his birthday candles, and he blows them out with a straw. So if you can imagine having a straw in your mouth and blowing through it to be able to concentrate where that air flows, he can blow out a candle using a straw. And when he was a kid, he loved practicing, absolutely loved it. And even, blowing bubbles helped with that too. He would need some sort of a straw or a tube-like bubble wand, but it worked, and he got to play bubbles with all the other kids. Always think how you can level the playing field. Think ability first. Number 11, we drew with sidewalk chalk. That's fun, right? Number 12, we played with Play-Doh. And there were fun toys that went with it. We used to have this thing where you would, it was a guy getting a haircut, and you could push the Play-Doh from the bottom, and his hair would sprout out of holes on his head, and we would pretend we were giving haircuts. That was fun, totally. And I learned that it is okay to mix Play-Doh colors. Previously, before having kids, I did not mix my Play-Doh colors. Once I had kids, mixing Play-Doh was totally fine. Number 13. Kraig had a lot of sensory needs, so we had swings inside our house too, especially in our basement. Playground swings, spandex swings, so many swings. I'll leave it at that. Number 14, we played with water balloons in the backyard. Water balloons in the backyard. Number 15, we had a trampoline in the backyard. We actually had 2. One wore out, got rid of it, got a new one. Even bigger. It was awesome. And now 16 is really fun because we played with water balloons on the trampoline in the backyard. We were such boy parents. Oh my gosh, we were like magnets for the neighborhood kids. They all wanted to come over. It was great socialization for both my kids. Water balloons on the trampoline. Number 17, plastic pool in the backyard. Like a little 4-foot across pool, one of those hard plastic ones. Kraig just loved holding the water hose and filling it up or standing in it. It was fun. Or he'd have some ball pit balls, and he'd like fill up the pool with that and watch the water flow in. Anyways, simple fun. $20, kids have fun all summer. Number 18, making handprints in concrete and decorating it with glass pieces. Have you ever done this? It's a great Mother's Day or Father's Day gift. We made ours in, I want to say 2007. I think, yeah, definitely 2007, right before we moved. So I have my kids' little baby handprints from when they were 2 and 4 years old in concrete at my house. So cool. Number 19, baking cookies. We baked a lot of cookies. Baking cookies is fun for us. And it didn't take much. Just any old occasion would be cause for cookies. Sleepover cookies, cookies for school, cookies for the church cookie exchange, Christmas cookies. We've had a lot of fun baking over the years. Number 20, painting with paintbrushes. At one point, we owned an easel. The kids loved painting on it. We would get the Crayola paints and the little chunky paintbrushes. And Kraig, one of the things that he loved to do, and it was probably a sensory thing, was paint his hand and then slap his hand on the art easel, on the paper on the art easel. It was so cute. I have so many different pieces of art, as I call it, from when he was little, where he just has handprints. And I put the date on it, so I knew what his little hand looked like at all kinds of different ages. That was his artwork. He doesn't write, and he doesn't really draw. He never has, so I'll take those handprints. I love them. Number 21, raking leaves into piles and jumping in those piles. That's fun. Number 22, making obstacle courses in our backyard and running through them. Oh my gosh, the dogs used to follow us around when we did this. They thought we were crazy. It was so fun. And finally, number 23, climbing trees in the front yard. I'm that mom that would get a ladder out and hold it so her kids would climb into the tree, and we'd just hang out in the trees and they'd wave at people. It was so cute. Nobody ever fell out of the front yard trees. Everybody was safe. All right. Next, I want to share some places that I went because I chose to be a stay-at-home mom. So these are places that I went because I chose to be a stay-at-home mom. There's like 60 things on this list. I'll put a list in the show notes. I am sorry for any duplicates. I was looking at some old pictures yesterday, and all those pictures reminded me of all the fun places that we have gone over the years. Why am I telling you about all this? Oh my gosh, Kim, this episode's so long. I'm telling you about this because this may give you ideas of fun things to do with your child to engage them, to have fun with them, to get that back and forth engagement. And let's not forget about the siblings. Like I said earlier, I was there for Kraig, but I was there for Derrick too. And I was there for my husband. We were there for our family. And Derrick met some of his first friends in the waiting rooms at the therapy centers. That's something I don't really talk about. I'm not saying that therapy centers are necessarily fun places to go, but Derrick had fun. His first friends had autism, Down syndrome, speech delays, mental retardation, and a number of other challenges. Derrick had such an amazing opportunity. It's kind of like massive reverse inclusion if you think about it. He was the odd man out because he was a neurotypical or typically developing child. Putting somebody who's typically developing among a bunch of people that have challenges is what I call reverse inclusion. What is this list? This is a list of places that I went because I chose to be a stay-at-home parent. Here we go. Number 1, I got to go to church with my family quite a bit. Number 2, the Toledo Zoo. Number 3, Imagination Station, the local kids' science museum. Number 4, Metro Park Playgrounds or Park Playgrounds. Number 5, swimming pools. Number 6, amusement parks, especially Cedar Point. Love it. Kings Island is also awesome. Number 7, water parks. Cedar Point has one. There's lots of others we went to, like Kalahari. Number 8, sledding in the winter at the local sledding hill in town. That was always fun. Number 9, a day out with Thomas. If you've never heard of this, you should check it out. I don't know the website, but you can actually ride on a real Thomas the Train. It's so cool. Number 10, I went to the class parties at school. I saw the kids in their Halloween costumes. I helped out. It was awesome. Number 11, family parties. I rarely missed any family parties. I really felt like I wanted to include Kraig in these. I wanted to make sure my family went to these, and because I was a stay-at-home parent, I got to go to them. Family is so important to me. I just want to point this out. Moving on, number 12. Okay, real quick story. I organize the Fall of Fun every fall for my family. It's not fall until we go to number 12, a pumpkin patch, number 13, a corn maze, number 14, a hayride, number 15, an apple orchard, and number 16 is optional, carving pumpkins. And how can I forget number 17, Hallow Weekends at Cedar Point. Hallow Weekends. Cedar Point is one of the best amusement parks in the whole entire country, and it's in Ohio. I live in Ohio. It's like, I don't know, an hour and a half away or something like that. There is Halloween-themed decor and music at the amusement park. Plus, the rides are running and it's dark. It's extra scary. Woo! Anyways, it's so fun. We love Hallow Weekends. And speaking of fall, number 18, we went to a Browns game. I don't know if I could have made it to stuff like this if I had been working full-time. Number 19, we read a lot of books. We go to bookstores. Number 20, libraries. Number 21, parades. Number 22, fireworks. Number 23, mini golfing. Number 24, a fire station tour. I actually went to that with Mom's group. Number 25, birthday parties for my kids and their friends. Number 26, vacations. Disney World in Florida, Hawaii, Chicago, New York City. It was a lot of fun. We've gone on some great vacations. Scheduling stuff's so much easier when you don't work full time. Just saying. Number 27, baseball games. We are Toledo Mud Hens fans, and I personally like the Tigers. Number 28, vacation Bible school. And the slushies at the end of the day, those are always fun. Every summer, until they got too old. Then no more vacation Bible school. Number 29, the first day of school. I don't think I ever missed a first day of school because I stayed at home. And I was always there for the last day of school. That was number 30, last day of school. Number 31, sleepovers with friends. Number 32, I coached sports. I coached soccer especially. Number 33, I was able to take Derrick to summer camps. So Kraig would be off at his summer camps. Then I was able to spend some time one-on-one with Derrick. Anybody who's got more than one child knows that that one-on-one time with your other child is just as precious. Number 34, we went to the circus. Number 35, we did a ton of winter stuff. We just like the fall of fun, we have like winter stuff galore. The kids would meet Santa. We would take the kids to the Children's Winter Wonderland. It was a Christmas season activity where this ice skating arena decorates and it looks like a winter wonderland. It's so cool. Number 37, there's an ugly sweater party at my church for Christmas time and a cookie exchange. Number 38, the local metro park called Wildwood Metro Park dresses up an old historic home called the Manor House, and they call it Holidays at the Manor House. That's a Christmas tradition for my family. Number 39, we have met the Easter Bunny. How cool is that? Number 40, we've colored and hunted Easter eggs. 41, we went to a hockey game. Number 42, we've seen the Globetrotters more than once. My son Kraig has always loved spinning balls on his finger, and I believe that one of the Globetrotters actually did that on his finger. I probably have a picture of that somewhere, but it probably won't make it into the show notes. I hope we go again to that someday. Number 43, we've done rock climbing at the YMCA. That's pretty cool. One of our YMCA locations has a small rock climbing wall. Kraig loved that. Number 44, we've done rock climbing at Planet Rock in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And if you've never done indoor rock climbing, it's awesome. I used to do it in college. And believe it or not, Planet Rock is the home of my bachelorette party. That's right, I had a bachelorette party at a rock climbing gym because that's just how I roll. And my sister, who was my maid of honor, was into it at the time too, so no complaints from her. And yeah, that was cool. I got to take the kids there. Number 45, visiting toy stores regularly. That's something that I got to do. I don't know if every parent does that, but I feel like as a stay-at-home parent, it was my duty to visit the toy store regularly. I'm not saying I bought anything, but I sure did visit. Number 46, I ate gumballs and junk food. I was not in the best shape. I did not treat my body well in my 20s and early 30s. But I ate a lot of really tasty food. Number 47, kayak trips. We have a 2-man kayak and we use it. Kraig loves it. Number 48, bike rides at parks and on bike trails. Lots of fun. Number 49, bowling. Number 50, I ate lunch with my kids at school. I probably did this with Derrick more than Kraig, but because I didn't work full time, I got to do that. Number 51, we went to concerts like the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, Sesame Street Live, and Disney on Ice. Pretty fun stuff. 52, we planted a backyard garden, probably from the time we moved into this house in 2007 to present. We've grown things such as zucchini, tomatoes, and lots of flowers. Number 53. My kids were both ring bearers in my sister's wedding in 2013. That's pretty cool. If I had worked full time, there's a chance that I may not have been able to go to that wedding. Back when I worked for a large chain community pharmacy, I would have to request vacation in October for the following year. My sister's wedding was in June. There were years when I scheduled a trip to Disney in August, and they told me, "Oh yeah, that trip 1 year from now, you can't go on that. I deny your vacation." We had already pre-planned it and paid for it and everything. That was actually that year. That's the year I quit. Anyways, moving on. Some other stuff, just a few last things that I got to do because I was a stay-at-home parent. Number 54, I don't think I ever missed a school play, school concert, sporting event, or movie night. I even volunteered at a lot of that stuff. Number 55, alumni gatherings at the University of Toledo. I don't know where you went to pharmacy school, but I went to the University of Toledo, and they would have College of Pharmacy, College of Nursing, College of Medicine all get together for like an ice skating and pizza night. I loved that. I didn't miss any of those unless I didn't call an RSVP in time, but I don't think that actually happened too much. Anyways, we got to go to homecoming football games as a family. We got to go to the rec center, like the recreation center for the students, and eat pizza and swim and use the pool tables and stuff like that. We got to go to all kinds of stuff like that. And I really think that I got to go to a lot of that stuff because I didn't have to work full time. So if I ever complain about missing out on my career, I try to remember all this stuff, all the cool stuff that I traded for my career. I mean, I don't want to put it that simply, but I really had a good time. I really have. Just a couple more. Number 56, we've gone to the therapy pool at the local YMCA. It's like a 92-degree pool. It's quiet, it's small. Kraig likes it. Number 57, we go to the community pool in town. It's cold, it's big, it's crowded, it's noisy. Kraig doesn't always like it, but when it's a little quieter at night and it's been a hot day, he loves it. Number 58, I think we already mentioned kayaking, so I'm going to skip that. Number 59, play dates with our friends in the neighborhood. We got to eat goldfish and drink apple juice at picnic tables and play on other people's play sets. It was a lot of fun. That was a huge long list, I know, but those are some of the really nice things that I got to do because I chose to be a stay-at-home parent. Now, I'm going to move on. But before I get to the resources section of this podcast episode, I want to talk about caregivers. 3 out of 4 of our parents still worked full-time when we had our kids. When we were going through the most challenging parts of raising Kraig and Derrick, my parents worked full-time. I had my kids so young that my parents were like 50. So they had at least 10 to 12 years before either of them were going to retire, and they weren't going to stop working just because I had a kid with a disability. I love my mom and dad. Mom and dad, if you ever listen to this, I know you needed to work. I made the choices that I needed to make, and I had a blast. I mean, I couldn't have predicted it when they were born, but it turned out fine. Now, the only person who didn't work full-time was my father-in-law, and he didn't want to drive Kraig around to his therapies and be the primary caregiver and organize all the stuff and fill me in on what happened in therapies and all that good stuff. And I did not want to pay for a nanny to drive my kid to services and fill me in, kind of like a family member would have to have done. Some of my friends who are physicians or high-earning individuals have spent upwards of like $50,000 per year in treatment services and probably another $25,000 or more in nanny wages to get the support they needed. So treatment and caregivers. Back then, back in 2005, looking back on it, I only made maybe $80,000 per year if I worked full-time, and I think I've made it perfectly clear I did not work full-time. If I would have made $80,000 a year and lost a good portion of that to taxes, like 20%, if I would have lost like 20% of my $80,000 per year, that would have been like $16,000. Is that right? $16,000 to taxes. I would barely have had enough money to pay for therapies and a nanny. I would have been just working to pay them. And I wouldn't have probably had as good of an idea of what was going on with my own family. I think that staying home was the right choice for my family. I know it was the right choice for my family. I would have been working to pay somebody else to raise my son and get him to therapy. I mean, big picture. I'm thinking out loud, but hey, somebody out there needs to hear this. Plus, I gotta say, you cannot put a price on having the conversations that I had with my son's therapist about how to carry therapy over into the home life. No regrets at all about staying at home. I did not plan on staying at home. I am a high achiever. I'm very intelligent, resourceful. I like to work. I have a good work ethic, but I had to do what was right for my family. You do you. I'm just telling you what I did and how I'm rationalizing it. Again, this episode is not for everyone. If you've made it this far, it's because you really care about hearing how somebody else did it. So you're getting the nitty-gritty. I hope you enjoy it. All right, let's talk about motivation next. What about motivation? Well, something that you need to know is that you will get more engagement, more back and forth engagement from your child if you know what motivates them at all ages of their life. What does that mean? Why is it important? Well, over the years, Kraig's had to learn things, right? If you don't properly motivate a child, whether it's toys, sensory stuff, experiences like wrestling or tickling or car rides or getting to go out in the backyard and swing or just having a break to sit in a comfortable chair and zone out. If you don't know how your child is motivated, they may not be motivated to learn the thing that you're putting in front of them, like how to talk or how to write their name or how to empty the utensil carrier from your dishwasher into the drawer. That's literally something my son has had to learn, and he's really good at it. But without some sort of motivation, he would not have done it. Know your child. A properly motivated child will make more progress than one who is not motivated. This is true of typical kids too. And I mean, for adults, if you're not properly motivated to go to your job, do you really feel like it's worth it? I mean, would you really work for free? If you're a pharmacist, would you really go work 40 plus hours per week in a busy pharmacy during a pandemic for free? No, you need to be properly motivated. Why should a child with challenges be any different? I just want to point this out. You'll get more engagement if you know what motivates your child. All right, we've been talking about some fun stuff and, it's been good, right? But I want to throw in something that's a little edgy, something that might make you uncomfortable. We grow when we're uncomfortable, right? So let's talk about playing the victim card. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes some parents act like special ed teachers or therapists have the cure for autism, and those teachers and therapists are withholding that cure from our child. Let me be clear. There is no cure for autism. That's real talk. There are many therapies that will help, but just because you think there is some magical person who can come up with an IEP goal that will help your child does not necessarily mean that they can properly motivate your child or design a program to achieve that goal. As parents, we need to push for our children's teachers and therapists to try. But we all need to, like everybody on the IEP team, needs to have SMART goals. And you have to eat those elephants one bite at a time. Those big goals may not be something that can be accomplished immediately, and you have to be patient. You have got to eat those elephants one bite at a time. Think ability first and challenge your child to learn and grow, but let's all be realistic. There is no cure for autism. Teachers and therapists can only do so much, and we've all got to work together. We will get much more done if we work together. Don't play the victim card. Don't ever accuse somebody of withholding the cure. There is no cure. One of the hardest lessons that I have learned in my whole entire parent journey is that it's okay to give up on skills that Kraig never picked up. I'm going to give you 2 examples. One example is pointing at objects in the distance. So maybe somebody says, "Oh, we're at an intersection. Do you want to turn left or right?" And say that person, like Kraig, cannot speak. You expect them to point, right? Well, not Kraig. That is actually one skill that he never picked up. Sure, he might pick up that skill at a later time, but right now, he can't do it. And right now, I think I'm a little more concerned about him zipping up his own coat than being able to point left or right. You got to pick your battles. The other example that I will use, a skill that he never picked up, is this is going to sound crazy, but he never developed an imagination. So, you know how you are bored and you can just use your imagination to think, oh, if I could just jump from the half court line and dunk this basketball, I could win a contest. Yeah, sure. That's something in your imagination. It keeps your mind active and busy when you're bored sitting there on the bus or waiting for a package to arrive or whatever. My son does not have a sense of an imagination, not that I know of. I can't just say, "Kraig, just imagine this. You're hungry and you need to say, 'I want pretzels.'" He can't just imagine that he's hungry. He just automatically thinks, "Oh yeah, I like what you're saying, lady. I am hungry. Give me some pretzels." He can't use his imagination. I'm sure the point's been made. I'll move on. I just wanted to say that the reason that I brought this up is that there are skills that are more important for your child to learn right now than sometimes pointing or developing an imagination. That's the reason I brought it up. You may need to know that because there may come a day when you have to let a skill go. You may think it's really important, it's the end of the world if they don't fill in that box, they don't check that box on your mental checklist of things that make your child whole. But I'm here to tell you right now, there are things that your child will just not learn how to do, and you're going to have to let it go so that you can pursue bigger fish. Okay? All right? Let's move on. I want to talk about one of the #gifts of autism that my family has experienced. What is a gift of autism or a #gift of autism? All right. This is one of those unexpected things that you get because your child has a disability. And it's not something you would ever wish for, but it's something that you get anyways. And for me, that gift of autism is photographs. Tons and tons of digital pictures. We have pictures of things that normally I would not take pictures of, okay? Pictures of toys, our cars, things that were around the house. People, places, festivals, county fairs, foods, lunch boxes, so many things. I have pictures of things that you would not normally take pictures of, and it's one of the gifts of autism. I have pictures of Kraig's teachers, paraprofessionals, therapists from school and his private ones, his teachers from preschool, student teachers from the public schools, student teachers from the University of Toledo, caregivers, babysitters, social workers. I've got so many pictures because we made picture cards or we wanted to tell Kraig's social stories. We have pictures of the dental hygienist cleaning Kraig's teeth. Who does that? But it makes it easier to explain things to Kraig. So we have all these pictures. And I'm just telling you right now, it's one of those unexpected gifts of autism. I'm almost done, I promise. All right, let's talk about myths. One of the myths about autism that I have a hard time busting for people is about time. Time, time. People think that all I need is a babysitter so I can just, do this little thing for them that just takes 3 hours. No, it does not work that way. If I had 3 hours, I honestly, completely honest, I would make more self-care choices. I would go to the gym. I would organize my work goals. I would go out to lunch with my mom. She called this week and asked me to go out to lunch with her. She left a voicemail and I got it too late to do anything about it. I probably wouldn't have been able to go out to lunch with her anyways, but I would like to have been invited like in real time, but I was busy doing something else and I missed the call and it sucks. I would do self-care things with my time. Honestly, if I had more of it all the time, people, they recognize my talents and I appreciate that. Thank you. People want me to serve on committees, attend meetings, review something, and so on. Listen, if I actually take the time to do something for you, it's for a reason. Usually it's because I care about you or I care about the cause that you represent. For example, I helped my church call a pastor to our church. Calling is another word for hiring. I love my church. I am Lutheran and I wanted to help my church. I was actually the call committee chairperson. I don't need the honor and glory of a title. I need a pastor to lead my church. So I just wanted to say, I don't put all my time, talents, and energy into Kraig and his needs. I used to in the beginning, but I have learned better. I got burned out. I have learned to be kind to myself and ask for help. I set boundaries and I say no a lot. I say no to things that do not fuel me. Myths about autism and parents of children with autism abound, let me tell you. Time issues are just one. Another myth is that when your child reaches 18, things get easier. Well, let me just tell you, I just went to court last April to become my son Kraig's legal guardian. I am Kraig's legal guardian. That ceremony, being in front of that judge reminded me a lot of my wedding ceremony. A judge had me sign a document that made my union with my son, as, me the guardian and him the ward, legal. It made a legal union. If you can imagine, I felt the gravity of that. So I just want to bust that myth. When your child reaches 18, things don't necessarily get easier. In some cases, the gravity of them gets larger. It is a big deal to become your child's legal guardian. It's not hard. You're a parent. You step up. You do it. But you just feel it, like you've made a promise because you have. All right, another thing that I've had to do, just FYI, since we're talking about things that happen when your child gets 18, I had to apply for Social Security income for Kraig last year, and that is a long process. He is probably going to be unemployable. I don't want to say that for sure because I don't know, but I have to go through the process and prepare him, like create this security net for him, this income, so that if he needs to live somewhere and buy things and pay rent and get clothing and food and medicine and everything, he'll be taken care of. Well, we were successful in our process. We did get the Social Security income, or SSI, if you will. And more than 16 years ago, I had to apply for Ohio Medicaid. I went to the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services, and I applied for Medicaid. And what you do is you apply for a Medicaid waiver because you know that when your son turns 18 and he's unemployable and he has no income, you're still going to have to pay for his stuff and he's going to need medical care. And if, God forbid, you should die, he needs to have all that stuff set up. So more than 16 years ago, I walked into ODJFS and I applied. And it took about 13 years to get approved. He was, I want to say, 15 years old when he got approved. That would have meant something when he was younger. I really wish that he would have gotten approved when he was younger, but he didn't. We paid tens of thousands of dollars out of pocket every year for therapies. We had to pay for medical bills that weren't covered. He had needs that were well beyond a typical kid. We had to pay out of pocket for special education services, therapies, all kinds of stuff. Autism, if you didn't know this, is a very expensive disability, and we have paid dearly. we also have had to hire a special needs attorney to set up a trust when Kraig was 5, just 5 years old. I gotta say that I don't know if everybody else feels this, but I felt like there was a lot of pressure to prepare for my death, basically. I had to prepare correctly for my death and keep up on it, keep on top of it. Every time somebody that's part of our plan dies or an account changes or anything, we have to keep on top of it. I'll just say that. It's something that most people don't talk about, but I just want to make sure that you hear what my family did in case it helps you. We're getting towards the end here. The last section of this podcast is about resources. I'm going to give you 3 websites and a handful of books to look into. And I want to say that above all, humans are the best resources. I have a mantra that I use, and it is find people you trust and listen to them. Find people you trust and listen to them. You don't have time to go back to school and become a special ed teacher, an occupational therapist, a speech therapist, a developmental pediatrician, and so on. So find all those people who you will be willing to listen to, who are going to help your child, and listen to them and get to know how to work with them. Remember, human resources are the most important resources. Researching autism, by the way, is an endless rabbit hole, so keep it light, okay? If a book looks good or a website, read the table of contents first or skim it over. Don't pressure yourself to read absolutely everything and become an expert. I mean, that would be ideal, but if you need to know about a topic and you only have so much time, I mean, common sense here, it's okay to read just one chapter of a book, the chapter that you need, or just read the summary of a website, just the first page, the part above the fold on a website. That's important to know. Anyways, there are 3 websites that I recommend. One is autismspeaks.org, the Autism Society, autismsociety.org, and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or cdc.gov. Just look for whatever autism-related topic you are looking for, and I would recommend those. I feel like those are reputable. Vet your sources. Go with something that is evidence-based. I am a pharmacist, and I really root for the evidence-based everything. You should question everything because this is your child's future. Take it seriously. Don't believe the first thing that you find. There's a lot of fake news out there. You heard it here first. Vet your sources. All right.